For the dessert course of this segment, we welcome Gregory Wessel of Geology in the Public Interest to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you. I've never been called a dessert course before. And I was going to say something really witty at the beginning, but you beat me to it. So I have a disclaimer for a start. This is an aspirational talk, and that's okay. I'm from a nonprofit, Geology in the Public Interest. We've been around about 15 years, and you can see we have a website, publicgeology.org, that explains a lot better what we do than I can in a few minutes I have. But sometimes I've given this talk a couple times, and I always feel like I could be preaching to the choir when I'm in a geology group or mining group. But then I realized about halfway through the talk that I'm not sure what church I'm in. And so then I think, well, but I'm going to be at Rolla, and I actually have my bachelor's from here in 74 and a master's in 77. So I think I know this church pretty well. It looks a lot different than it did then, but it's been a while too. I'd like to leave you with one question. I mean, in thinking about what everybody has said so far, it seems like we're looking for ways to encourage kids to get into this at all levels and do this. And the mining industry itself is not very anxious to really respond in a way that would encourage kids to get in. So I guess my question would be, is in fact having the mining companies change their approach and their standards and being very visible and upfront about it, one way, by raising their standards, one way to actually recruit students, to get people interested at a younger age. So that's my conclusion, but now I'm going to give you the talk anyhow. Let's see if I have the, that's forward, I guess. Okay, good. So it's really no exaggeration to say we're living in a pretty unique moment of time. We have finally realized that as a species, we are a destructive geologic force, and that we must stop doing that and adapt to changes we need to make to be really sustainable, a sustainable part of the ecosystem. But it's not just us, it's everybody who needs to make changes. And that's why it's critical that our children learn and understand the importance of sustainability, real sustainability. Just as history, math, and science and grammar are taught to young people, so should sustainable living be taught at home as well. The first endeavor for any, or first goal for any endeavor is to define what we're talking about. And in this case, it means what it clearly means to be sustainable. So in 1987, the World Commission on Environment and Development, in what's known as the Brundtland Report, offered its version, which is sustainable development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Problem with that is that we don't know what needs future generations are going to have at all. You just have to guess. But also the word need. So let's for a minute think about the word need. Many argue that we need these critical minerals, implying at all costs. Consumers may be sold on the products containing these minerals, but whether we need them is another matter, or at least in the quantities we talk about. A Smithsonian exhibit on the cell phone Unseen Connections includes a display that says as if everyone in America uses their phone a year longer on average, it would equal the emission reduction of taking 636,000 gasoline-powered cars off the road. All you have to do is use this one more year, and that's equivalent to 636,000 cars. Now, for reference, that's half the cars registered in New York City. It's more than all the cars registered in the state of New Mexico. So it's not so much that we need it, it's that we want these things. But that can change too. Liebenthal and others expanded that definition to state that for extractive industries, given that fiscal revenues constitute a major source of net benefits, the interest of future generations can be protected through the efficient utilization of these revenues for people in the host country. In other words, mining can be called sustainable if the profits benefit the host country. Well, mining companies exist for profit, clearly, but when measuring sustainability, profit can't be given excessive weight unless the short-term profits are used to mitigate long-term environmental and social damages, which to date has never been done. Sustainability is about the long game, not the short game. Groups like the Global Reporting Initiative and the Mining Association of Canada have defined the responsibilities of mining companies to manage social impacts, plan for climate change, and reclaim disturbed areas. Even so, they all acknowledge that sustainable mining is an oxymoron. And so for that reason, it's been replaced with responsible mining, which is described as planning, operating, and closing mines in a manner that manages but does not eliminate social, economic, and environmental risks and impacts. The organization best dealing with the promotion of responsible mining is the Initiative Responsible Mining Assurance, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a really interesting website too. Members of IRMA are encouraged to raise their own standards of practice to meet IRMA's standards so that they can be certified as responsible. But there are a lot of major mining companies, in fact, most that have not joined IRMA, and that, as far as we know, are not overly concerned about raising their standards beyond what they have as in-house standards, primarily because I think they're most concerned about maximizing short-term profits. So I'd like to just go through a couple of 3 mining projects that illustrate where mining in the past went very wrong, where it could yet go wrong, and where it could go right. Beginning in the early 1970s, the Panguna mine on the island of Bougainville in Papua New Guinea was the largest open-pit copper gold mine in the world and became a major income stream for the mining company, a subsidiary of Rio Tinto. But the scale and nature of the operation led to resentment within the local community, pollution of local rivers, forcible purchase and destruction of land, lack of any community influence on decision-making, and inequitable division of the mine's profits fed discontent and led to acts of sabotage and a secessionist movement. By 1989, the mine had been decimated and was closed. Years of conflict resulting in the deaths of up to 20,000 people ensued before peace was restored in 1997. Rio Tinto divested its interest in 2016, leaving the environmental damage unabated. Discovered in 2004, the Oak Flat deposit could not be mined unless the land was first transferred out of federal ownership. For that reason, Resolution Copper, a joint venture of BHP and Rio Tinto, began lobbying Congress to pass a law allowing them access through a land swap. Their plan was to block cave the deposit, creating a crater 2 miles wide and 1,000 feet deep within an area sacred to the San Carlos Apaches. Several versions of a land exchange bill were floated, but each received pushback until 2014, when proponents slipped the land exchange into a midnight rider to the National Defense Authorization Act. Few knew about it before it was unveiled after 11 p.m. the evening before the bill came up for consideration. Nevertheless, it had been impossible for the land exchange to stand on its own 2 feet. It was voted in 2 weeks later. But the fight isn't over. The Biden administration withheld approval of the environmental impact statement, and a group comprised of Apaches and other native peoples and their allies sued to stop the land swap. They narrowly lost recently in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals among the full Court of Judges, but now hope to present their case to the Supreme Court. So one bright spot is the Thacker Pass deposit in northern Nevada, which contains an estimated 3.7 million metric tons of lithium in near-surface lake beds. Lithium Americas received the go-ahead to begin mining after a rigorous permitting process, and it may turn out to be an example that other operations can look to for guidance. Continuous open pit mining will occur entirely above the water table, and mined areas backfilled as the mining proceeds, allowing for a high degree of reclamation. They're also a pending member of the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, and Thacker Pass may easily meet IRMA's standards for responsible mining. Given the setting, the type of deposit it is, the orientation and geometry and such, they may very well surpass IRMA's standards very easily. So being responsible is a leap forward for sure, but it's not the same as being sustainable. Being sustainable requires full cost accounting, where all costs, monetized or not, are accounted for and mitigated. So knowing that geologists work with the surface and shallow subsurface of the Earth, I'd like to propose some enhanced standard based partly on these aspects of human development that are impacted by geology: location, water usage, waste management, site disturbance, and natural habitat. So all of this said, these are the standards that we really need to follow, the fundamentals. Mining benefits and costs must be measured using full cost accounting. You can't ignore some costs, just as you would not ignore some benefits. We should be consistent with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which you don't hear much about in the United States. There is to be no loss of water quality or quantity. There's to be no loss of critical habitat or impacts to endangered species. There should be temporary or reversible impacts only. No permanent losses or contamination are allowed. Mining must be fully respectful of priorities of indigenous and other land users. Mining must include restoration of habitat topography to mimic the pre-existing state. And then we must go further with rewilding and habitat enhancement. And I said this was aspirational, and I meant it. But there isn't any reason why we can't really get very much closer to that. If the mining industry were to do this, or even try, it would bring the industry in line more closely with the principles of a sustainable circular economy. So another way to start doing that is to prioritize alternative sources in place of new discoveries. For example, existing waste streams at active mine sites, the waste streams produced in various stages of raw material extraction present an opportunity to optimize material utilization through a circular economic approach. How about recovering metals from abandoned mine waste for the simultaneous purpose of remediation? We've all been talking about that here this morning. And sometimes those contain elements that we didn't value before and do now. And we can also re-examine existing districts or previously mined deposits to take better advantage of that, again, limiting the amount of environmental impact overall. What's last? New discoveries in virgin areas. That's what we typically do all the time, and yet that's what should be our very, very last resort, provided that those and undertaken if we can actually mitigate the impacts of that. So I would like to present a definition based on all the above, and this is from one person. It should, in theory, be from a group of people, a committee, where no one can be blamed, like me, for this one statement. But I'm offering it anyway. This is a definition of sustainability that we could use to judge mining as well as other human development. It says sustainability requires managing Earth resources to address current needs without negatively impacting natural resources now or in the future. It requires maintaining and expanding ecosystem health and ensuring a long-term balance between economic activity, environmental restoration, social and environmental justice, and societal well-being through full cost accounting. So I know that's an aspirational statement, but we can accomplish it if we really want to. And I think that if we value the health and welfare of future generations, if we think that's important, then we must do it because there really is no other option. And I thank you.